Welcome to this Tutor to You Criminology video on how laws change from culture to culture as part of Unit 2 Criminological Theories for WJEC Level 3 Criminology. Assessment Criteria 1.2 requires students to know how criminality is a social construction, and part of the criteria for that is examining how laws have changed. We've mentioned in other videos in this series that definitions of crime are socially constructed. That is, they're created by people in one society, and what defines a crime may change from one society to the next. Laws may also change over time, as many crimes are a reflection of the social attitudes of individuals in that society and in that period of time. Criminologists examine these different social contexts and look at social and cultural factors that might influence definitions of what is a crime. And in this video, we're going to focus on a few factors and give you a few examples of how crime changes from culture to culture. There are a number of different factors that might influence how one culture sees an act as being a crime while another does not. Firstly, the political views of the government. As governments create law, often laws are a reflection of the views of that particular government. While some governments are quite liberal and see certain behaviours such as drug use as not much of a social problem, more conservative governments would look to clamp down on these crimes, perceiving them to be immoral. Similar attitudes exist towards prostitution and other moral crimes. For example, prostitution is legalised and controlled in many parts of Europe, including the Netherlands, which also has liberal attitudes to drug use. Conversely, more conservative nations such as the UK outlaw prostitution. A second factor that influences the definitions of crime in a society is the religious views of society. While the UK is a secular state, that is, one with limited religious influence, Islamic nations such as the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia and Qatar have laws that reflect their religious teachings, which forbids the consumption of alcohol and homosexuality. In the UK, both of these activities are legal. A final factor is how society sees traditional norms and values. Some nations hold on to more traditional values, for example, different roles for men and women in society, or cultural attitudes to family life and attitudes to family, and these are upheld by social norms and values. For example, honour crimes. Whilst not commonplace in the UK, are more common in more traditional societies, where obeying your family and not bringing shame upon the family unit are seen as being of paramount importance. Our first example of how crimes change from society to society is through the differences in attitudes towards wearing a hijab in both Iran and France. In 2022, Mahsa Amini was killed in police custody following an arrest for removing her hijab in public. This sparked protests across Iran, and it's estimated that between 100 and 200 protesters have been killed as a result. It is illegal for women not to wear head coverings in Iran, and this is monitored by religious morality police. In a different culture, France, it's illegal for women to cover their faces. So in one culture it's illegal to wear a hijab, and in another it is illegal not to, which demonstrates how religion impacts on laws, and how laws change from culture to culture. Another example is changes to abortion legislation, and this links to political views. Whilst the USA has had legal abortion for some time, it's always been a controversial topic, with debates between pro-choice and pro-life groups dominating politics. In 2022, the landmark ruling Roe v. Wade that made the right to have an abortion a federal law, one that all states have to abide to, was overturned. This means that states can choose to make abortion illegal in the US. In contrast, in 2018, Ireland voted to legalise abortion and become one of the last Western nations to do so. However, abortion remained illegal in Northern Ireland because of the political views of Northern Ireland's elected representatives, demonstrating that political thinking can cause laws to change, or not in this case. Finally, an example of how social attitudes in society influence different definitions of crime. Whilst homosexuality was decriminalised in the UK in 1969 and moves had been made to create greater equality with heterosexual relationships, such as the Civil Partnership Act and allowing gay marriage in 2013, there are many states across Europe where gay marriage is illegal and has legislation against gay people having families. Whilst most of these are in Eastern Europe, most notably Russia, it demonstrates how social attitudes in one nation make acts illegal, whilst in others they remain illegal because of different social attitudes. There are many other examples of changes in law across cultures. In many parts of Africa and the Middle East, the practice of female genital mutilation is legal and seen as part of the culture and heritage of a nation. In the UK, this practice is illegal. In the USA, the differences between federal and state laws mean that different states have different ages of consent for sexual relationships, marriage, and alcohol consumption. And as briefly discussed earlier, many states governed by Islamic laws have strict policies about alcohol consumption, including the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and the host to the 2022 World Cup, Qatar. That concludes this Tutor to You criminology video, looking at how laws change from culture to culture. Thanks for watching.